Well, I think unfortunately the reality is that Muslims are responsible, at least in a large part, for the negative press that abounds because we provide stories. Were there no material, there would be no story. And sadly, there are a great many Muslims out there who are portraying a very negative image of Islam, and not just, the terrorists. There are also Muslims behaving in ways that are completely at odds with the message of Islam, and of course this is then propagated as a representation of Muslims and the message of Islam, and of course that presents a very distorted picture for people who already had heightened concerns. If you can imagine, in the sort of post 9/11 7/7 climate, there was a lot of, and there is still a lot of, fear and confusion. And then in addition to that, you have sort of Muslims behaving badly, if you like, in other areas, which reinforces this idea that Islam has only negative things to contribute to society, that it is a problem. Now, of course, it's undeniable that there is an issue with the media, or certain sections, I should say, of the media, certainly, more right-wing leaning media, that do propagate, sometimes completely factually incorrect stories about Muslims, and do entertain an atmosphere of negative press, that they've realized that negative stories about Muslims do sell, and I think this has been certainly picked up on by many mainstream figures, whether it's Mehdi Hassan from the New Statesman, or Baroness Varsi from the Tories, or Peter Oborne, the journalist, who said quite rightly that anti-Islamic sentiment is the last acceptable form of bigotry in Britain. So clearly it is a problem, it does exist, but I think it's important that Muslims realize that we do have issues within the community, serious issues that need to be dealt with, and whether the media spotlight is shone on them or not, we should be tackling them. I think the reason that they talk about, Muslim or Islamic extremists is because, unfortunately, the extremists at hand do claim to be inspired by Islamic precepts when they act. They do claim to be quoting, sources that, reference Islam, or they, quote disjointed or decontextualized passages of the Quran. So, they themselves do claim to be acting in the name of Islam. I think the right-wing press certainly has a huge part to play for, in presenting perhaps a disproportionate attention to the Islamic label, if you like, and perhaps not being so even-handed in the presentation of other stories. But certainly I read an article in The Guardian today about the burning of a mosque in the West Bank, and it referred to Jewish extremists. So, this language is used. It's just obviously there are undoubtedly, unequivocally, there are sections of the right-wing media that do play on these negative stories, and on minute stories that perhaps aren't even sort of based in fact, to scaremonger and foster an atmosphere of fear and hatred, which is very convenient in the current economic climate, when really very few people have any concrete solutions or any positive propositions to make in order to enhance ease or improve people's lives. And we historically, and it's a fact historically, that in periods of economic downturn, there is a search for a scapegoat, and I think as Europeans, we need to be very wary and very concerned about the direction that we're taking, just because of our history, and because we need to be alert to the fact that this is a phenomena that has struck before and could easily strike again. Certainly the rise of Islamophobia has gone hand in hand with a rise of anti-Semitism. I mean, Berlusconi recently was caught making an anti-Semitic joke, during a conference. I mean, this sort of rise of acceptability of sort of far-right discourse is extremely worrying for all of us. Well, I don't know if I necessarily see myself as a role model. I think perhaps the best message is to say that, the current pantheon of celebrities, the sort of array of demigods that parade as role models, are perhaps not the greatest people to look up to, and certainly are not those who I hope that we as Muslims will be looking to in terms of how to model our own behavior. It's incredibly important to make sure that you are selective in the information that you appropriate about anything, and certainly about your faith. So I think it's, the key message is to be critical, to be selective, and to have a nuanced understanding. There are very, very few things in this world that are black and white, and the best thing that one can do is to keep acquiring knowledge. I think that I can remember a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in which he talks about knowledge as an armor, and it's a friend, and this is absolutely true. The more information you have, the better you're able to discern the complex reality in which we find ourselves, and I think part of that discerning and part of that understanding helps to develop a more stable and balanced core, and hopefully move us beyond the kind of reactionary responses that we often have, so that we can return to the core precepts of the faith. It's absolutely essential that we stop this tit for tat, that we remember that the Prophet, peace be upon him, quite rightly said, do not be the people who say when they are good to us, we are good to them. When they oppress us, we will oppress them. Rather, be of the people who say, when they are good to us, we are good to them. And when they oppress us, we do not oppress them. These are the messages, these are the sort of powerful messages, really, that we should be propagating, that we should be using as tools to try and transform our society towards a greater ethical ideal, and hopefully be carriers of the divine values that we hope to see in the world around us. And if we're not doing that, then there's a problem. Wow, well, I love traveling. I love traveling to any country, but certainly in the Muslim majority countries, there are a number of places that I hope to be able to travel to in the future, one of which is Malaysia. I'd love to go to Malaysia, Indonesia. I'd love to travel to Iran. It's one of the countries that's been on my map for a while. Syria is another place. Absolutely, there are a great, and Senegal. I'm desperate to travel to Senegal, if I may, at some point. But I love traveling, and I think part of traveling is expanding your mind and realizing that there is so much diversity, even within our own community, even within the practice of Islam, and that diversity is a richness. The richness of different perspectives, the richness of different understandings, and I think that it's important to realize that, because sometimes we are caught up in quite a narrow understanding of Islam, and so I think traveling can really help us to sort of broaden our horizons in that respect. Things like human rights laws, individual freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of congregation, freedom of religion. These core aspects, of course, are the issues that spring to mind when I think of Iran at a political level, but at a social, cultural level. I have a good many Iranian friends, and I really do hope to be able to come and meet, the real Iranian people, and not necessarily the talking heads that we see on TV, that I'm sure don't represent the sort of rich and diverse culture in the country.